The last chapter focused on how plants made food, but in order to survive, all organisms, including plants, must break down food for energy. This process of breaking down food, whether it happens in animals that break down the food they eat, or in plants as they break down the food they make, is called cell respiration. So energy from the breakdown of food through the process of cell respiration replenishes the supply of ATP. ATP is then used for cellular work, like moving muscles. Breaking the bonds between the last phosphate group and ATP produces ADP and phosphate. Energy from the breakdown of food is used to bond phosphate and ADP back together, and the cycle continues. In this chapter, we'll see how the breakdown of food allows for ADP and phosphate to be bonded back together again. In order to get energy, humans and other animals eat their food. If the food we eat contains glucose, we break down that glucose. And if it doesn't, our body can produce glucose using the food that we eat. So whether you eat sugar like a fat kid on Halloween, or you eat as healthy as a horse, your body will break down glucose to get energy. However, one problem. Your body can't use glucose directly. Why not, you might ask? Glucose stores a lot of energy. In fact, 1 gram of glucose has enough energy stored to raise 9 kilograms of water 1 degree Celsius. That might not sound like a lot, but 9 kilograms is almost 20 pounds. To break down glucose would mean that your body would release all this energy at one time. Most of it would end up getting wasted. Imagine if you used a stick of dynamite to open your soda can. The can would get open, but you would waste most of the energy in that stick of dynamite. Most of the energy that was lost would result in heat being given off, and you would need a lot more glucose. People with high metabolisms are actually breaking down glucose inefficiently because they need more glucose than most people, and they're generally warm. The process of breaking down glucose has 3 steps that begins with a step called glycolysis. If oxygen is present in the cell, the glucose can be more efficiently broken down. And if it's not present, a different pathway is followed, which creates much less energy. Cell respiration is the process by which an organism breaks down glucose and other food molecules in the presence of oxygen in order to produce energy the cell can use efficiently. You'll notice the steps of cell respiration are very similar to photosynthesis, but they simply happen backwards. The first stage of respiration, which takes place in the cytoplasm, is called glycolysis. The products of glycolysis then move into the mitochondria, where they're broken down during the Krebs cycle. The Krebs cycle attaches 2 electrons to 2 different electron carrier molecules. The electrons move down the electron transport chain, producing energy. Ultimately, the electrons moving down the electron transport chain are attached to oxygen and hydrogen to make water. Even the overall equation for cell respiration is just photosynthesis backwards. The process of photosynthesis, or the products of photosynthesis, are the reactants in cell respiration, and the reactants in cell respiration are the products of photosynthesis. So in an animal that doesn't make its own food, where do all these things come from? Glucose can come directly from your bloodstream if you just had something to eat, or if you haven't just eaten, glucose comes from your liver where it's been stored as glycogen. Oxygen used in cell respiration is from the air we breathe. Oxygen moves into our lungs and then into our blood. When oxygen is present, aerobic respiration takes place. Sometimes oxygen is not available to use, like if you're exercising really hard. At the end of cell respiration, carbon dioxide is breathed out, as well as water. Put a mirror next to your mouth when you breathe, and you'll see small water droplets condense on the mirror, making fog. The energy produced in this process is used to do cellular work. The first step of cell respiration that occurs, whether or not oxygen is present, is glycolysis. This happens in the cytoplasm. In order to get the process started, a small amount of energy is put in, 2 ATP in fact. The word glycolysis means break sugar, and that's essentially what happens during glycolysis. Glyco is sugar, and lysis means to break. Remember how lysosomes break down old organelles? They come from the same word. So 2 ATP are put in to get the process started, but it ultimately produces 4 ATP, so that's a net gain of 2 ATP. It also passes on some electrons to an electron carrier molecule called NADH. So when glucose is broken in half, a molecule called pyruvate or pyruvic acid is produced. This pyruvate will then move into the mitochondria if oxygen is present, where the rest of cell respiration will happen. If no oxygen is present, pyruvate will stay in the cytoplasm and the process of fermentation will occur. You don't need to answer the questions on this slide, but go back and highlight the answers in your notes.